Welcome to the Mommy Oyoyo podcast. Mommy Oyoyo is a platform for the modern African woman to talk about anything and everything related to motherhood in today's world. Join me, Berry Dakara, as we tackle the good, the bad, the ugly, the highs, the lows, the wins, the losses, and everything else in between. Mommy Oyoyo is your plug for real life gist and experiences about being a mother, African style. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Mommy Oyoyo podcast. As usual, it's me, Berry Dakara, and I am very happy to present episode 71 to you. In this episode, I spoke with Dr. Ijeoma Kola about mothering long distance. Yep, you heard that right. She mothers from a long distance. Let me give you a little bit of a background before we get into the episode proper. Ijeoma is a professor in the US. She and her husband have a toddler, and they maintain two residences, one in the US and one in Kenya. And for a few months out of the year combined, she is here in the US while her son and her husband are in Kenya. And then they kind of flip it around every few weeks or so. And I wanted to speak with her about what that is like, how she maintains her, how she navigates mothering her young child from such a great distance. Everybody knows that it's not that easy, and how she's also managed to, I guess, deal with some naysayers because she has had some comments from, I want to just call them trolls, okay, from trolls who say that she's a bad mom for daring to pursue her career while she's a mom. And I'm so happy that Ijeoma was willing to speak with me, and I hope that you guys learned something from listening to this episode. And as usual, don't forget to wait until the end of the episode to hear other episodes that you might be interested in that are kind of similar to this one. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Jama.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here today.
I am super duper excited to have you on the Mommy Oyoyo podcast. I know this is like I think I asked you once before about being on the podcast, and then you just weren't too sure about it, but then I came back and I asked you again for this episode, and I'm so glad that you are finally here, and I'm very excited for the conversation that we are going to have. Just for the people who are listening, for the audience, I have followed Ijeoma for, I want to say, like 10 years since you started. Yeah, since you started blogging about natural hair, and I don't think you remember, but there was this one time where you had a giveaway on your blog, or was it YouTube, about you told us followers to recreate a hairstyle that you had done, and I happened to win that giveaway and was here in the States on holiday, and you sent over the stuff. I was like, oh yeah, look at me. And since then you've been my friend in my head. But anyways, I'm so happy to have you here on the Mommy Oyoyo podcast. So could you please let everybody know who you are, what you do, your family life, all of that wonderful good stuff?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that story up. I totally forgot. I have terrible memory. So let me see what I can remember about myself to do this little intro. So I'm Ijeoma Kola. I am a very proud Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria. I was raised in the US, which is why my voice sounds like this, but very much love my Nigerian culture and heritage, and that's a strong part of who I am. What do? I am currently a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Notre Dame. I study the history of race in medicine. I specifically look at the way that doctors and scientists have thought about the relationship between race and disease over the course of the 20th century. And my current book project is looking at perceptions around asthma in Black urban America in the 20th century. I also have been blogging, as you said, for a very long time. I feel so old in the blogging world. I've been blogging since 2010. So over a decade now. Started off as a natural hair blogger, started off on YouTube and then migrated to a website primarily, and then, Instagram and et cetera, et cetera. And right now I am more or less just a lifestyle blogger, not just, I'm more or less a lifestyle blogger, kind of just talking about any and everything, with a real focus and passion for supporting and empowering Black women to improve their education, their health, and their just like personal development and empowerment. And then the last, well, not last thing I do, but another thing that I do is that I'm the founder and executive director of a nonprofit called Cohort Sisters, which supports Black women pursuing doctoral degrees around the world. We have various programming, just to help be a supportive community and a place where people can get resources and mentorship for getting through the doctoral journey. Outside of what I do professionally, personally, I am a very lucky wife. I've been married to my husband for 5 years. It'll be 5 years in April. So I feel like that time it was just like 2 years the other day, but pandemic has accelerated and slowed down time like simultaneously in weird ways. So we'll be celebrating our 5-year anniversary shortly. And I'm also the mom of a 2-year-old who is one of the joys of my life. Yeah, that's my homie right there. That's my yes. In addition to those identities, I really love, right now I've been really loving interior decor and like home decor and home design. We bought a home like 8 months ago, and I've been slowly transforming each space in the home. And so that makes me happy. I also love to cook, but I've realized I've been living by myself for a couple of weeks at a time. And I realized I actually only like to cook for other people. And that has been an interesting revelation because I do not cook for myself right now, but as soon as anyone else like is around, even if it's just hosting people, I love to cook. I love to entertain, but I actually don't like to feed myself personally. So that's something I've learned in the past couple of weeks.
So how are you eating? What are you eating?
I've been seriously struggling. Like my fridge right now is so embarrassingly empty. I promise you, in my fridge, there's like one thing of hummus, there's like 2 peppers and like a pack of blueberries. Like that's all I have in my fridge right now. It's so ghetto. I've been I think my issue is I'm used to cooking large meals, and so I don't want to eat the same thing over and over again. Like, if I'm cooking, I'm like, if I'm gonna take the time to cook, like I might as well cook 6 servings, but then don't want to eat that whole thing over and over. So anyway, I've just been scrounging. I've been scrounging today. I basically ate like cereal for lunch. And I ate an apple.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with cereal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
You gotta do what you gotta do. So I've been existing on, apples and peanut butter and rice cakes and cereal, but I'll have a real meal for dinner tonight.
Amen to that. Well, thank you very much for introducing yourself. That's so much that you're doing. And I know that anyone who's listening might be like, oh my goodness, how is she doing everything that she does? Where are you finding the time, especially as a mom? So could you please let us know, how do you find the time? How do you get yourself organized to do everything that you're doing?
Yeah. Okay. So I think that organization is separate from time. So let me talk about organization first, and then I'll talk about time. So in terms of being organized, there are a lot of moving parts. I essentially have 3 jobs. I work as a professor and researcher. I work as a blogger, and then I work as like running this nonprofit. So those 3 jobs. And I recently I was always like a journal person and a list person, but I actually transitioned recently to using a digital planner on an iPad. And that just having like a one thing that I can carry around everywhere, and I won't feel bad that I haven't written in it because the pages are undated. So I feel like with my journals, if I would miss a couple of days in a planner, I'd be like, well, never mind, and just throw it away. Or you have like 3 different planners, all around your house, and you don't even know like which one you're using. But I've really been liking a digital planner, just in terms of having everything in one place and having a schedule for the week. I like to do like weekly planning. So I have my to-dos for the whole week. I don't really do day by day because another element of my life is you got to be flexible. So some days I'm doing a lot more work on research. Some days I'm doing like only cohort sisters work, for example. So I like to plan out the whole week. So that's in terms of organization. A second like project management tool that I really like is Asana.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of goes into the time piece, but aside from teaching and research, none of the other things that I do I do by myself. Cohort Sisters, we have a team. Even with my blog, my blogging business is called Safe Journey Media because Ijeoma is Safe Journey.
Hey.
So with Safe Journey Media, I have a team of contractors. There are 3 of us who work on that. Cohort Sisters are also 3 of us. And so I'm, still managing everyone, but I'm not doing the day-to-day tasks alone. I also feel like I started different things at different periods of time. So for example, I started blogging was the first thing. And
Mm-hmm.
when I did start to blog, I was already in school. I started when I was in college. So I already knew how to, work around my assignment deadlines and, my school schedule and kind of fit blogging in wherever it fit in. And then as I grew that business and when I went to graduate school, I just already had a clear sense of how to do the blog alongside my school. And then cohort sisters, I didn't really add that on until I stopped when I finished my PhD program and I wasn't teaching yet. So I kind of only was blogging. And I like to keep busy. So I felt like I had a lot of time. So I started a nonprofit. And then by the time that had grown a little bit, I had decided to go back to teaching. And then, so now like teaching is like what I spend the most time on, and then cohort sisters, and then blogging. So it's, I don't know, I feel like at different points in my life, so one of those 3 things, academics, let's call this like mentorship, and then blogging, like different ones have taken up more time. And I'm very comfortable and very happy with the way that my life is organized. As I said, I like to do different things. So I would much rather, I think you have to like want to be a multi-hyphenate or a side hustler, however you want
Right.
to put it. You can't like force that for yourself. I think some people try to force it, like just because they think that's what we all should be doing now, but no need to force it. But for those of you who, or those of us who do like to wear a lot of different hats and do multiple things, I think kind of going in knowing and just like being comfortable with the fact that there are different times, different seasons in your life where you'll be focusing on one thing. There's never a time where it's like 33% to each of the 3 things.
Right.
Sometimes it's 80% this and 10%, 10%. Sometimes it's 50% one thing and then, 25, 20, or however it breaks down. But yes, I hope that answered. Okay, I didn't really answer about time management. Aside from having a team, one of the reasons I'm able to do a lot of what I'm doing at the current moment is that I am not parenting in person. So I kind of mentioned this earlier that I am like living by myself right now. So my husband and my son are in Kenya. They've been in Kenya for, we will have spent 8 weeks apart. And so we've kind of gone into, this is a new thing when I started this postdoc. And we decided that I would start off the semesters with them in Kenya. And so I
Mm-hmm.
could just like focus. Because usually the beginning of the semester is the busiest time, you're trying to figure out your coursework and, getting students to get themselves together. And doing course planning and all that stuff. So for the first couple of weeks, I'm just really focused on work primarily. And then by the time they come, they're coming very shortly. I'm so excited. By the time
Aw.
they come back, I'm already like in a groove. And then I can kind of insert them back into my life in a day-to-day way or like hour-to-hour way. They're still very much a part of my life, but that's just kind of like how we've worked out this particular season in terms of balance.
Okay.
So yeah, so when my family is here, yes, my days look very, very different than what they currently look like right now.
Totally understood. Thank you very much for giving me the segue into the main topic of our discussion, the main topic of our podcast today, which is mothering long distance. As Ijeoma has mentioned, her husband and son live primarily in Kenya, and she's here, you're here in the US. And can you give us a little bit of a backstory as to how your family, how you came to that decision to leave Kenya and come back to the US?
Yeah, so I think I need to start with why I ended up in Kenya in the first place. So my husband's Kenyan, but I have grew up here. He went to college here. That's where we met. But when I was finishing up my PhD program, I had been in school for like 20 some odd years consecutively. Like I'd never taken a break from school. And I finished my program. I was pregnant when I finished, and that was the plan. I wanted to be pregnant right around the time that I was finishing. So we had talked and thought a lot about, what I wanted my life to look like post PhD. And I knew for a fact that I wanted to take a break. I needed to rest. I just like had never taken off. I had never not been in school. So I just had to sit down somewhere and rest. And he had wanted to go back home and spend some time with his mom and his sister because he had been away from home for so long. And I had visited Kenya a bunch of times. So I was like, yeah, this place is cool. Like y'all got Wi-Fi. I'm good. So we decided to
Wi-Fi
move
is very important.
Wi-Fi is so important. Like I feel like if there's Wi-Fi, like I can live anywhere essentially. If there's Wi-Fi and the light doesn't go out, that's the issue with Nigeria. Like
Yeah.
we just got our light together. Anyways. But yeah, I was very comfortable in Kenya. So we moved right after, in the summer of 2019, right after I finished my PhD, had my son in Kenya, was on like maternity leaving, if you will, in Kenya. And it was when we moved, we decided, or rather before we moved, that it would be a 2-year experiment, and then we would reevaluate after the 2 years.
Okay.
So at about like a year and a half, so maybe this is like 6 months, no, let's say about a year, at the year mark. So my son is around a year. I am, he's now eating solids. He doesn't like need me all the time anymore. I started to get a little bit restless, and I started to feel like, now that I've had some space away from the doctoral degree, I realized that I actually never gave myself a chance. Before I say, actually, I don't want to be a professor anymore, like I should probably try it. And I had gotten advice from my dissertation advisor that, if you're out of academia for like 3 years, it's really hard to get back in. So he was basically like, if you ever want to do this, you should probably reinsert yourself now.
Right.
So talk to my husband about it, and he was like, whatever you want to do, go ahead. We'll figure it out. We're definitely like we'll figure it out kind of family. So I just shot my shot. I applied to postdoctoral programs and got this opportunity. Was not expecting to be in Indiana, but that's where the job landed me. And before, like once I got the job, then we had to have the conversation of like, okay, so what does this mean for our family? My husband has a tourist visa, a multi-year tourist visa, but he can't stay in the country for extended time on end. My son is a U.S. citizen, so him traveling back and forth isn't an issue. But because my husband doesn't have a green card, he can't stay here, all the time. So he also, thinking about his career, I'd made my own career decisions. So he was building and is building a startup in Kenya, and it is gaining traction. So for his career, it made more sense for him to stay in Kenya. For my career, it made more sense for me to be in the US. And so we just decided that we would do that temporarily. It's a temporary postdoc. It's only 2 years long. And we were like, let's try it out for the first year and see what it looks like for us to spend a couple weeks together, spend a couple weeks apart. Sometimes the kid is in the US with just me, sometimes in Kenya with just my husband, sometimes we're all together in one or either country. And we just said like, we'll just try. And then if it doesn't work, then we'll figure it out. And that's essentially what we did. We did it in the fall, and it was incredibly difficult, especially early on. I feel like this semester I'm doing a lot better, but in the fall I cried a lot. It was awful. It was very painful to be away from both of them. I felt like I was missing, my son he's now 2. But kids, they grow up. I'm like, oh my gosh, you could sing this lullaby. Like, when did you learn how to sing? Like, when did you learn the words of this song? So there are definitely things, that I've missed, but at the end of the day, what I'm doing right now is not only what is best for me, but it's what's best for our family. Like I'm setting us up, like my career pursuits right now is alongside my husband's career pursuits at the moment. Like we're both setting ourselves up for greatness. So it's a temporary sacrifice. I also had a model. My mom in the 90s had, come to the US. The reason why I even grew up here is because my mom had moved from Nigeria to America and left myself and my older brother and our dad in Nigeria for 18 months while got our life set up in the US and saved enough money. And then we were all able to come over. So when times get really tough, like I just call her and we talk through it. And she's been an incredible support system. And really, I think I posted the other day on Instagram, like she's the blueprint. Like I'm like, if she did it and she didn't even have WhatsApp, so I'll be fine. I will be just fine.
I was really surprised to see that when you mentioned about your mom being the blueprint, because in a way, I feel like people might say now, well, Ijeoma, she grew up in the US. She's been there most of her life. She's not really like, how our people talk.
Yeah,
she has American mentality, so maybe that's why. But then you can clearly say, my mom was Nigerian, grew up in Nigeria, lived in Nigeria all her life, and then decided to leave for a little bit to further her career. So what's the difference here?
Yeah,
absolutely. It's not an American thing or a Nigerian thing or whatever. Like women do it all the time. Well,
yeah,
not as much as men, but women do it and are vilified. I do have to there was a post you put up like a month ago or so on Instagram, and I have to read it because I read. I'm like, listen. So this is what Ijeoma said on that post. She said, "It's so sad that we live in a world where choosing yourself is seen as revolutionary at best or selfish at worst. I've been called both, but never in my life have I ever heard anyone call a man who takes a job and leaves his family elsewhere either selfish or revolutionary. He's just a working man. He's even celebrated for having the courage and fortitude to pursue an opportunity to create a better life for himself and his family. But a woman, Ijeoma Kola, who spent 11 years pursuing post-secondary education, leaving her family to do the work she was trained to do in her field of study, a Black woman at that, and with a young child, really grinds some people's gears. I guess y'all thought I was reading all those books all my life just to sit at home and twiddle my thumbs with all the knowledge I've acquired. Like, excuse you. And it's something that I like. When I read that, I remembered when I was younger, my dad had to move out of the country like several times from Nigeria, and everyone was like, oh yeah, your dad cross-posting, it's his career, mommy stays with the children. And why is it that when women are going on cross-posting too, it's like, oh, how dare she leave her children? How dare she leave her husband? She's not a good mother. She's not a good wife. Like, what is that about? And I'm sure that you have had similar responses. I'm sure you've had naysayers who have things to say about your decision because you are public about, you're a public figure, you're on YouTube, you share about your life. How have you reacted, or what do you say to those people who are like, I cannot believe you left your small child with your husband? What was wrong with you?
Yeah. Oh gosh, what do I say? So there's a difference between what I think and what I say. So I think, my initial reaction is that I just feel sad for people because I think when folks are like, oh my gosh, how could you possibly do that? One, like it signals to me that they have a very narrow and limited idea of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a mother, what it means to be a wife. And a world in which they are fulfilled and like pursuing their dreams and doing things not just for themselves. I feel like that's the part that people like miss out on. Like, what I'm doing is not just for me. Like, this is for my whole family. This is for us all. And so I feel like when people don't get it, I'm just like, dang, I feel bad for you because like you're just living life one way and like you're not allowing yourself to think outside the box, and you're not even allowing yourself to have dreams. And you may be, I don't know your business, but you may be with a partner who wouldn't support you in the first place, but that's your problem. Like I also feel like this is another thing that I think I never say, But I feel like folks are projecting. It's like, you wanted to, maybe you had a dream and you didn't feel like either A, you could bring it up to your partner because you felt like it would be shot down, or you thought your family would shoot it down. And so you just never pursued that dream. And now you're like looking at this person who went and pursued that dream and feeling like, oh, how could she do that? Because she wanted to. The end. Like that's really all it boils down to. So that's what I think. What I say is different. um, so what I typically say, I think there are three kinds of there may be two main reasons why people are like, oh, how can you do that? One is that culturally, this is not acceptable in terms of what mothers should do. Mothers should stay at home with the children. Men should be the ones working. So my response to that is typically that in my marriage that I have with one person and not with the whole world. Like, I am married to my husband and not the y'all, so it's none of your business. But anyway, so in our marriage, we both decided that we would both be working. That is what both of us want to do. So that's like number one. And then another argument that people give, this one guy, usually men do this, where they're like, that's not what the Bible said. And then I'm just like, well,
where did the Bible enter this matter from?
So, no, my gosh, this man like tried to tell me that the Bible said that women shouldn't work. And I was like, show me the receipts, in what verse? And then he brought up some verse in Titus. And I was like, that verse actually does not say that women shouldn't work, but let me just completely read you, because what I have time for is to dissect the scripture. That is what I definitely have time for. So yes, another argument people try and use is like a religious one, which is, like women should respect their husbands and be subservient. And my response to that, which usually assuages people, although this is not my ideal response, but it satisfies this curiosity or this anger, which is that my husband and I are in alignment and we're in agreement. We made this decision together. And that gets the Christians to shut up, because their whole issue is, how could you do this? And your husband, you should be listening to your husband. And as soon as I'm like, well, this is actually my husband's idea. He was the one who told me to apply for postdoc. So can't be mad at that. So whether it's a cultural thing or it's a kind of like a cultural response or a religious response, that kind of shifts my how I respond to a comment or negativity. But at this point, I just don't. I feel like I've said the last thing I'm gonna say about it, which was the post that you read. Thanks for reading it out. Because yeah, I don't have, as you heard, I'm very busy. I don't have time to engage with folks who don't understand that in the 21st century, like, you should be equipped and empowered enough to live life on your own terms and mind your business and not be all up in someone, like, not be concerned with how someone else is living their life. Like, all that matters is that my family has made this decision, that we're happy with it. Like, no one else's opinion should matter. And unfortunately, in the year of our Lord, 2022, people still feel like they got to say something when they don't like what somebody else is doing with their life in a way that does not impact them at all. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on that. So your husband and your son are away right now. How do you navigate motherhood? Practically, I guess, maybe also theoretically, like, how do you navigate being a mom to your son from thousands and thousands of miles away?
Yeah, I love this question because, it's something that I've sat with and thought about, just like, how am I still, like, am I mothering? And the answer is yes. So two, like, very practical things that I do every single day, almost every single day, is that when my son wakes up in the morning, which is so currently it's an 8-hour time difference. So usually wakes up around 8. So like my midnight, whenever he wakes up, my husband calls and we go into his room together. So like, I'm on the phone as my son is waking up and I'm like, good morning. So I wake up with him, I wake him up. He often doesn't want to, he's like, no, mommy, no. He's not trying to talk to anybody, which I get. I don't want to talk to anybody first thing in the morning too. So I don't blame him. So the first thing in the morning, I always just say good morning to him. Because that's what I would do. If we were in person, my husband and I, we alternate when we're all together, we alternate who is on morning duty. So yeah, I would be the one to say good morning to him sometimes. So I make sure that I try to do that every day. And then on the flip side, same thing with nighttime. So in the night, when after, he's taken his bath, sometimes daddy will read a book. Sometimes mommy will read a book, and I'll read a book that's actually that's here, and I'll hold my phone so he can see the pictures and see the pages. And we'll pray together. My favorite thing in the world is when he says, "Mommy, pray." And he asks me to pray, and we pray, we say goodnight, and then he goes to bed. So I think on a day-to-day, like those are the like I interact with him in what is to me meaningful ways during the day. More theoretically, I feel like something that I have, and you got to have the right partner to do all this, but something that I've really appreciated is that I'm still very involved in the day-to-day decisions that impact my child's life. So he actually just started daycare in Kenya, or school in Kenya. They don't really call it daycare. So he started school in Kenya. And before I left, we, like as a family, went and toured places, and decided together as a family, like which place he would go to. And there was like one place that my husband had gone to after I had already left, but we did a video walkthrough. So I was still involved in that decision, because he started after I left. So I was still involved in that very big decision about like, where is my son spending his time during the day? So I'm like involved in big decisions. When it comes to the weekends, we'll talk about like, oh, like what are y'all gonna do this weekend? I'll suggest like, oh, maybe you guys should go here, and maybe you'll do this. And so I'm still involved in high level decisions about his life and his well-being. Not his food anymore so much. Actually, I haven't really thought about, I don't know what he's eating, but but I think it's important to, especially school, that's where he spends most of his day outside of the house. We do have a nanny in Kenya, and she had been with us for a long time. So she already knows like what my expectations are. And so I'm trusting that she's continuing to do things the way that she was when I was still there. But yeah, on a like day to day, really just making sure that I see him in the morning and in the evening. Even if it means that I've been in meetings, and I've, depending on the meeting, but I've been in meetings and I'm like, hey, I need 5 minutes. I got to say goodnight to my son, and I'll mute myself. I'll turn off the camera and I'll go be with my family. So, I carve out that time because it's important to me.
It is important to keep that when you're long distance, to keep that communication. And thank God for things like WhatsApp and Zoom and Duo and FaceTime and all of these things, because then it's easier for the parent who isn't around to maintain that communication with their child. My ex-husband, he lives in Virginia, so he tries to call our daughter like once or twice a day. Sometimes she has the reaction that your son does, like, oh my God, just leave me alone. Like, can you leave me alone? I'm playing. Just go. I'll talk to you tomorrow. But yeah, it's very important to keep that communication going, and for them to see your face. You can see their facial expressions and all of that. You did mention that you guys kind of do it like on a rotational basis. So what's the longest time that you've been away from your son physically?
Yeah, so 8 weeks. So I started my job in August, and I moved at the beginning, like the end of July last year. And so we did an 8-week calculation. And so they came at the end of September. And then we're doing the same thing. So they came at the end of September, and then I was with my son the whole time. My husband was here for some time, and then he left, and then he came back, and then we were all together again. And then similar thing this semester, first 8 weeks we're apart. They're both coming shortly, and then we'll all be together, and then my husband will leave, and then it'll just be me and my son, and then my husband will come back, and then we'll all go back to Kenya at some point. So yeah, that's the kind of cadence that has been working for us. I will say that I feel like what is 6 weeks would be preferred. Six weeks is like 8 weeks is, by the 6th week I'm like, oh my God, I just want to see my baby. But at 8 weeks it's not terrible. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Um, Earlier you mentioned that, when you first started uh as a professor and being away from your son, and that it was really, really hard for you. And I'm going to assume that it wasn't just like missing your son. I'm sure you had to deal with some mom guilt about
Yeah.
being away from him. So how did you deal with that?
Yeah. So funny because I don't think I was hit with like mom guilt about being away from him actually. Where the guilt, I'll talk about where the guilt came. What I was feeling was that I felt that I was missing key development, but I didn't feel guilty about it at that
Okay.
moment. So I would say like the one time where I was like, oh my gosh, I completely missed this was like this one day my son started singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And I was like, when did you learn this song? How do you know this song? When did this happen? So in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, like you can do stuff and I missed it. But I didn't feel guilty at the time. I don't know, maybe I was just too busy to feel guilty, but the guilt didn't happen then. When I did feel mom guilt is, and this is so strange, but it was actually when we were, so as I said, like we would be apart for some time, then we'd all be together, then my husband would leave and I would have him alone. So there was a 3-week period where, 3 or 4 week period where it was just myself and my son. And mom guilt came like a hurricane.
Oh, wow.
I think that I really struggled with, because here I am by myself in the US. And I was kept comparing, like, well, how come I am like not going to bed on time? And how come I'm struggling? And how come he's sick? And I was comparing his existence in the US with his existence in Kenya,
Mhm.
where the weather was warmer, where he wasn't going to daycare at the time. He wasn't going to daycare in Kenya. So he wasn't sick. He was sick in the US because he had gone to daycare and he'd never been around all these little kids, and kids are germy and disgusting.
Right.
So he was just like constant runny nose. So I felt like, oh my gosh, like I like took this poor kid out of this warm weather that he was in. Now he's over here bundled up in a coat. His nose is always drippy all the time. And he doesn't have enough support. It's just his mom. In Kenya, it's dad and grandma and auntie and the nanny, and he just has a lot more support. So it was a weird kind of like reverse go. I felt like I was doing him a disservice by having him here with me by myself, because
Oh,
I
wow.
knew that his quality of life, the reason why he's not here all the time is because his quality of life is going to be better in Kenya. It's just a fact right now. At the age where he is, we're still trying to figure out about the education system, as he gets older, but as a 2-year-old, his quality of life is way better if he can be in a cleaner environment, in warmer air, where he can run around outside freely. And go, we literally live like a 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk from my mother-in-law.
Mhm.
And my sister-in-law has a son who is a couple months older than my son. So he can go and walk and just go and play with his cousin, and go and hang out with Dana. And like, that's good for him. Right.
Right.
So that was where my mom guilt kicked in. I felt like I know people are going to think this is crazy, because I felt like I'm being selfish by like having him here with me, knowing that he could be flourishing and not sick and not like shivering cold if he was in Kenya still.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'd be very interested in seeing what it would be like when they come again and when you're alone with him again, because I think now you'd be more, well, at least you've had that experience, so you probably be better prepared for
Yes,
him being
absolutely.
here.
Oh, I'm so ready.
Awesome. So we're gonna start rounding up a little bit, but I want you to, like, if there was a woman who's considering, you know, being away from her family for an extended amount of time, to pursue her career or education, what kind of advice would you give to her?
Yeah. I think you got to have the right support systems in place. Otherwise, you're just not going to be happy. You're going to be frustrated. So the only reason why this works is because I am confident that without me, being present on a day-to-day basis, my son will be great. I'm very confident in the competence of his father to feed him and clothe him. I'm very confident in the fact that, you know, there's family close by for if for some reason, like anything happens to my husband, if he can't work or he falls sick himself and can't take care of him, there are other people there who I trust wholeheartedly to care for my child. And so I know that the support system is in place. So I think that, yeah, I think where it gets really tricky if you're trying to leave your family and leave your child or children elsewhere is if you don't trust that who you're leaving them with will do a good job taking care of them. So you have to have that trust, you have to have that support. And if you are partnered, like they got to be in support of it. I mean, not that they have to be. I fully believe in like doing what you want to do, you know, within reason, but you'll be a lot happier. The whole family will be a lot happier if they truly, honestly support you. And I'm very fortunate. Am I fortunate or I just chose smartly? Chose smart. I chose a partner who I knew who just respects me and really considers me as an equal. And wants to see me pursue my dreams, and knows that everything that, like all my great ideas are for our family. So I would say my biggest piece of advice is just make sure that you have the support systems in place.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much for that. I know I had put out this question, like I had written out the question, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. But then earlier this week on Instagram, I saw on another Instagram page where someone was asking about this exact same thing. She's considering leaving Nigeria and moving to England for her master's, and she wants to take her children with her. And her husband's like, we cannot afford, to like daycare or whatever in England. I'm here. Your mom is here. My mom is here in Nigeria. Let the children stay with us. And she's like, no, how can I leave my children? Oh no, and people were just trying to, advise her that, listen, things are not as easy as they look on TV. Okay. You're going to be there. You're going to be spending all of your time in school and working and all of these other things. Your husband is at home. He says he'll take care of the children. Your mom is at home. They have the grandparents and everything. Let the kids stay back home. They're not going to die.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm glad that I asked this question, and thank you very much for sharing about your experience. And I know that a lot of people that listen will definitely learn something, and I appreciate your time. Could you please let everybody know where they can find you online and get all of your goodness? It's true. No, listen, every time I see a notification that Ijeoma has posted on YouTube, I'm like, where's the TV? Let's go and watch. Y'all don't understand the goodness.
Oh, girl, you don't be looking for those notifications because I don't know if they're coming again.
No, they'll come. They'll come. I'm patient. I'm a very patient person. That's what I've learned. So whenever you're ready, I'm here. But yeah, just let everybody know where they can find you online.
Yeah, so I am all over the internet and entirely too many places on the internet at Ijeoma Kola. So that's IJEOMAKOLA. I have a website, so ijeomakola.com, Instagram at Ijeoma Kola, YouTube, Ijeoma Kola, I think YT maybe, but if you just search Ijeoma Kola, it'll pop up. I've also actually been loving Twitter lately. So if you're on Twitter and you like to tweet, check me out over there as well. Yes, that's where you can find me.
And Cohort Sisters, because
I didn't know we were shouting out all the things.
Yeah. Oh,
we got all sorts of things to shout out. So yes, if you're interested in a community, if you're interested in pursuing a doctoral program, or you are already in a doctoral program, then definitely check out Cohort Sisters. It is SISTAS, and that's also on cohortsistas.com as well as on Instagram. And I also am bringing back the Safe Journey Retreat. So that is a annual women's empowerment retreat on the continent of Africa. So it's a week-long group travel trip with workshops and personal development events and activities. And I'm bringing that back, and I'm announcing those new dates shortly. So I'm very excited because it was canceled twice due to the pandemic. And I'm really, really, really excited to bring it back finally.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And then you're also working on some books.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I can talk about one of them.
Okay.
So I'm working on so my dissertation in as a historian, most historians like in the field were expected to write books as opposed to journal articles. And so I've been working on kind of transforming my dissertation into a book. So yeah, I've been like writing some different chapters, working on my book proposal. I'm hoping to have it out to editors at presses before the end of the semester and hopefully have a little book deal by the summertime. But yes, I'm working on a book on the history of asthma in Black urban America. So you can be out on the lookout for more info about that shortly.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ijeoma Kola. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. And thank you very much for sharing about your life and your experience, mothering long distance. And everyone, you heard where to find her. All of the information is going to be in the show notes, so make sure you check that out. So thank you very much, Ijeoma. This has been an awesome, awesome, awesome conversation.
Thanks for having me on the podcast.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed listening to my interview with Ijeoma. I hope you learned something. If you enjoyed listening to this one, then I think you'll also enjoy episode 49. In that episode, I spoke with Iro about managing motherhood and a C-level career. And Iro is someone she has multiple businesses, and she's really passionate about growing her career while having two daughters, and she's actually a single mom as well. So I think that that's a very good episode for you to listen to. Another episode that you would enjoy is episode 55, where I spoke with Victoria Downs about being a mom boss without mom guilt. And another episode I think that you'll enjoy as well would be episode 56, where I spoke with my cousin Nene about going back to school as a mom. And basically, the reasons why I'm highlighting these particular episodes is because these are women who chose to further their careers or further their schooling while being mothers. And a lot of times, as African women, it's like, oh no, your be all and end all should be about your children and your husband. And you know what? That's just not the simple truth. That is not the truth at all. So I hope that you are able to listen to these episodes. And, if that's your jam, if that's what you're looking to do, is to further yourself, then I think that you will get inspiration from these conversations that I've had with other women. Thank you again for listening to the Mommy Oyoyo podcast, and I will catch you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Mommy Oyoyo podcast, real conversations about motherhood for the modern African woman. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe to Mommy Oyoyo on your preferred podcast player, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To keep up and join our conversations online, you can follow on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Mommy Oyoyo. Also check out our website at www.mommyoyoyo.com and feel free to send feedback via email to mommyoyoyo@gmail.com. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time.